The Apothecary Diaries. Season 2. When Knowledge Becomes a Curse. The moment Maomao recognized the scent of wolfsbane mixed with jasmine tea in the Empress's private chambers, she knew three things with absolute certainty. Someone was planning the most sophisticated assassination attempt in palace history. She was the only person capable of stopping it, and her knowledge would likely get her executed before dawn. What she didn't know was that her discovery would unravel a conspiracy that reached the very heart of the imperial family, forcing her to choose between saving the empire and saving herself. It began innocuously enough, as palace intrigues always do. Jinshi had summoned her for what appeared to be a routine consultation about a minor skin ailment affecting several court ladies. The symptoms were peculiar but not alarming. A slight discoloration around the eyes, barely noticeable unless one knew what to look for. Most palace physicians had dismissed it as cosmetic fatigue from late nights and heavy makeup. But Maomao's trained nose caught something others missed. The faint metallic undertone that suggested systematic poisoning, administered in doses so minute that each individual exposure was harmless. Her curiosity, that dangerous trait that had already earned her a reputation as the palace's most useful and most troublesome servant, compelled her to investigate further. She began tracking the affected women's daily routines. Their meals, their cosmetics, their medicines. The pattern that emerged made her blood run cold. Every poisoned woman had one thing in common. They were all potential candidates for the emperor's attention, rising stars in the complex hierarchy of the inner palace. When Maomao presented her findings to Jinshi, his usually composed demeanor cracked for just a moment, long enough for her to realize he had suspected something all along. The revelation that someone was systematically eliminating competition for the emperor's favor was shocking enough. But Jinshi's reaction told her there was something far more sinister at play. The poisoner wasn't just targeting random concubines. They were specifically eliminating women who shared certain physical characteristics, a particular bloodline that Jinshi refused to name. Her investigation led her deep into the palace's forgotten archives, where she discovered records of a concubine from 30 years prior. A woman whose beauty had captivated the previous emperor, but who had died mysteriously before bearing an heir. The official records claimed natural causes, but Maomao's medical knowledge allowed her to read between the lines of the court physician's deliberately vague notes. The symptoms described matched those she was seeing now, suggesting that someone had been playing this deadly game for decades. But knowledge, as Maomao learned too late, was indeed a curse when it illuminated truths that powerful people preferred to keep hidden. Her breakthrough came when she realized the poisoner had made one critical error. They had used a compound that, while undetectable to most, left a distinctive mark on the victim's hair follicles. Under the right conditions, with the proper preparation techniques that only someone with her particular expertise would know, the evidence was unmistakable. The night she made this discovery, Maomao found herself face to face with the unthinkable truth. The systematic poisoning wasn't the work of a jealous concubine or ambitious family seeking to advance their daughter's position. It was being orchestrated by someone with access to the imperial pharmacy, someone with intimate knowledge of the palace's daily routines, someone who could move freely through the women's quarters without suspicion. When she finally identified the perpetrator, the revelation nearly destroyed her faith in everything she thought she understood about justice and loyalty. The poisoner was the very person who had been helping her investigation, feeding her information and providing access to restricted areas of the palace. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. But what truly terrified Maomao was the realization that her mentor had been testing her all along, measuring her abilities not to stop the murders, but to see if she was capable enough to become the next instrument of this ancient conspiracy. As the pieces fell into place, Maomao understood that she had stumbled into something far larger than a series of murders. The poisoning campaign was part of a generational plan to control the imperial succession, ensuring that only children from approved bloodlines could ascend to positions of influence. The seemingly random attacks on potential concubines were actually precise strikes against families whose lineages threatened the established order. Her knowledge had become a weapon pointed at her own heart. Every fact she uncovered, every connection she made, drew her deeper into a web of corruption that had been operating for decades. The very skills that made her invaluable as a poison detective also made her the perfect candidate to become the conspiracy's next executioner. Her mentor's final test wasn't whether she could solve the mystery. It was whether she would choose to perpetuate it. The moral complexity of her situation crystallized when she realized that exposing the conspiracy would destabilize the entire empire, potentially triggering a succession crisis that could lead to civil war. But remaining silent meant allowing the systematic murder of innocent women to continue, condemning future generations to the same fate. Her medical oath demanded that she protect life, but her duty as a palace servant required absolute loyalty to the imperial system. Jinshi's true identity, revealed in the story's climactic moments, added another layer of impossibility to her choices. The man she had come to trust, perhaps even love, was not just a palace official, but a member of the very imperial family whose power structure the conspiracy sought to protect. His request for her discretion was not just about maintaining palace stability. It was about protecting his own position in the line of succession. In the end, Maomao's curse wasn't just that her knowledge put her in danger. It was that her intelligence had grown beyond the point where ignorance could provide sanctuary. She had become too valuable to kill, but too dangerous to trust, trapped in a position where every decision carried the weight of an empire's fate. Her final choice, made in the shadow of the imperial pharmacy where her journey began, would determine not just her own survival, but the future of every woman who would enter the palace walls after her. The bitter irony was complete. The girl who had always found safety in facts and certainty now faced a future where knowledge itself had become the most dangerous poison of all, one that no antidote could neutralize.